Hello, Hassa from Hassa Reviews here, and well, let's get started. When you think of the best comedies ever made, a lot of them that will be mentioned are the ones directed by Mel Brooks. And let's be fair, Mel Brooks' comedies are some of the most influential of all time, from Producers to Spaceballs to Robin Hood Men in Tights. Those are some of the most well-loved comedies ever made. Look, Man in Tights has some detractors, but it's still well loved. But among all of them, the one that often gets talked about, one of his most famous, is Blazing Saddles. I totally agree. It's one of the most influential comedies ever made. I mean, in terms of its parody of the Western movies to its use of fourth wall breaking humor and all that, it is a comedic marvel. Definitely one of the greatest comedies ever made. With that said, though, it's a movie that nowadays sort of seems impossible to remake, especially with how things have changed since the 70s. I mean, especially over the last 2 years with Black Lives Matter and all that. So to do this again would mean you have to rework the whole entire film. But in many ways, it can be done. Things have been updated they are culturally sensitive nowadays, and have kept their charm. So it's not like it can't work. But well, let's see. But I'm not sure. But so in 2014, I think, or 2015, they were announcing they were going to remake Blazing Saddles, but animated. Which, yeah, it's okay. But instead of cowboys, we're now going to get it with samurais. Alright, still can just change the setting, just change the theming, and it could still work. And it was meant to come out in 2017, under the direction of Rob Minkoff, the co-director of The Lion King, director of Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and the live-action Stuart Little movies. But with Mel Brooks, of course, returning as an executive producer and a bit of a screenwriter. But this didn't come out in 2017. I still don't know why it got delayed until this year, but anyway. So lo and behold, when I heard a few months ago that it was coming out in theaters, I was okay. I was willing to give it a shot. But then I found out it was retitled. Instead of Blazing Samurai, it's now called Paws of Fury: The Legend of Hank. If you're going to do which is probably one of the worst titles I ever heard. I mean, Blazing Samurai, if you're going to parody or redo a previous film, stick with what you originally have. Blazing Samurai is a pretty good title, but I don't know. It just seems like generic kids movie title, Though even then, I mean, this is a children's movie of a adult live action comedy. So, yeah. With that said, we should get off the plot. So it's basically flows very similar to the original film, but with different setting and characters, and we're doing with animated animals. Anyway, in a fictional town set in feudal Japan, a town is constantly attacked by bandits and is being protected by their lone samurai, who is basically like a sheriff. But a business tycoon or wealthy sophisticate who lives up on the hill wants to eradicate the town so he can appease the rule of Japan. So he runs the town samurai out of town in hopes that they will run away with it. But instead, they send warning to the ruler he's trying to impress, asking him to bring in a new samurai. In order to help benefit himself, the sophisticated cat names a dog to take over as the new samurai, which could cause problems since dogs are not allowed in this place because it's all run by cats. Dogs apparently live on a separate island. So the dog arrives and is a little bit unsure about name Tank. Arrives in town and is initially met with hostility one kid, but he meets an old samurai who is a bit of a loser nowadays, and he convinces him to help train him in the ways of being a town samurai in order to save the town from what the business tycoon from destroying it. I mean, this basically flows in the as I said, this is similar to the original story. Just swap cowboys with samurais, the Wild West of feudal Japan, and the main lead being a dog rather than a black African American. Yeah, so which you have to change in this because it's no longer the same era that we live in. So it does make sense why you would update it. And with that said, I mean, I'm okay that they kept the structure very similar to the original film. Even a lot of the unique jokes and humor that came from that film is still there. I mean, that the famous fourth wall breaking climax is still in it, and it's handled pretty well, even if it is a little bit different. So yeah, that's great. And you've got, and of course, as I said, it handles that well. What it doesn't handle well with the humor is the modern use of humor, which okay, for the most of it, the humor seems similar to the original film, but due to it being a kids movie, we have to get very kiddish jokes, which is especially toilet humor. Oh boy. So, I mean, I forget if there was any toilet humor in the original Blazing Saddles, but this goes overboard, especially when the tycoon sends in his army and they're lying tortured with their farts. Oh god, that was the worst. Yeah, that was the worst part of the film for me. So yeah, that's where things sort of fall flat, and and unlike the original film, these characters are pretty basic. You've got the outcast hero who wants to be a legend, but is being mocked on, due to, a different, not looking similar to everyone else. You've got the greedy business tycoon. You've got the kid who wants to be a hero, but is constantly being ignored. You've got the wise old teacher who fell down on his luck and is now pretty much basically a loser, and that. You got all those caricatures. You got the dumb henchman. You got this hulking Beast, who is actually a bit of a clueless brute himself. I think the sumo guy is probably my favorite character in this, along with the wise old teacher. But as I said, the characters are actually no. The wise old teacher is my favorite. Just but well, okay. I don't mind the characters, but they are pretty bland. With that said, though, the voice acting certainly makes up for it. This has got a really good voice cast. So many great comedians in this. I mean, Samuel L. Jackson, Digimon Hauser, I think that's how I pronounce his name. Ricky Gervais, George Takei, and Mel Brooks, of course, is the ruler of this fictional kingdom. So Michelle Yeoh is also in it too. So yeah, it's got a good cast. Samuel L. Jackson is my personal favorite, along with Ricky Gervais, and Mel Brooks is up there, but I would probably count him a bit more to the side because this is still technically, a remake of his movie, which he was originally in. So you can't really put him on the same cast. I'm more going for the newer cast members. So yeah, that's fine. The animation though was pretty subpar. I mean, this feels like it's just trying to copy the success of Spider-Man into the Spider-Verse. I mean, I've got that a bit with more recent anime movies as of late. I mean, obviously, the bad guys was very similar to this, but it honestly looked a lot better. In fact, even the upcoming Puss in Boots sequel looks even better than this, And I think another thing I also want to know is how exactly does this world work? I know cartoon logic, but I want to know about this dog, where he comes from, and how he comes from a modern. When he reveals where he comes from and why he wants to be a samurai, it's set in a modern city, and apparently he just got on a boat and drifted to this feudal Japanish cat kingdom. And I'm like, wait, what? Come on, just give me a better explanation of how this world works. Jeez, I had a similar problem with Alpha and Omega when I reviewed that. last time, and though my problem was more with the physics and how the wolves could do superhuman feats like lighting short air and all that stuff. Yeah. But with that said, I was kind of expecting not to like this, but in a way, it's just okay. Nothing good, nothing special, just okay. But as I said, if you really want to, if you're an adult, just watch the original Blazing Saddles. It's still a must, still a great comedy, even with the culturally, even with the the outdated things of racism and all that. It's still a good comedy in its own right. So with that said, I'm going to give this a 5.5 out of 10 hat stars. I'd say little kids would probably get a good kick out of it. I'd say at least until probably the age of 12. Yeah, I'll say 12. And then you can just pretty much show them Blazing Saddles in my view. But then again, I'm not a parent, so parents just, you decide when you want to show them that movie. But for now, just show them this. This will be a good enough substitute. But so yeah, what's next? I'm actually going to go back to video games, but it may take me a little bit while to get to this because I've got a few things coming up. Personal, that is. But it will just depend, really. But in the meantime, this is Hazard from Hazard Reviews out. I shall see you for my next video. Ciao!